Hey guys, this is John Box. Welcome to MST.TV. We've got an awesome guest with us here today. We have the one and only Pack.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Thanks
Pack
for joining
here.
me.
Of course. I'm happy to be here.
No, man, I'm glad you signed up on this because this is one of our best segments on the show here on MST.TV, the Ultimate Counter Guide, where we try to cram school everyone's hand traps into one little segment. I'm glad you're here because
Yeah, and we have the extravaganza coming up this weekend. So if you guys are, planning to do well for that event, one of the best things that can help you prepare is this video right here. So I'm glad Tom Box invited me to come on and help you guys, do the best you can to prepare yourself.
And if there's anyone you guys want to listen to, guy that tops with low budget, guy that plays really well with high budget, none other than Pack. Go subscribe to Pack. Link is down in the description. Link is on the screen. You guys can go ahead and hit that button. Ding the notification bell for him as well. So let's cover the matchup here today. Usually I do 7 matchups, but you guys think that, oh, that's way too long. So we're gonna cover the most popular matchups, and if this segment is popular enough, maybe we'll do a second segment about maybe some of the tier 2, tier 1.5 stuff, stuff like that. So our matchup roster here, we have Dragon Link, we have Shaddoll/Invoke. I guess they're kind of like the fusion package. And then we have Eldritch and Dogmatica as our control package. Then there's Kit Kat, which are the birds. And I guess the other really strong matchup in terms of combo or board breaking, dinosaurs. These are the winners of the bandits, clearly.
Yeah, no, 100%. A lot of these decks went unscathed, so it's no surprise to anyone that these are the best decks that people will be playing.
Yeah, for sure. So this time around, we're gonna do something a little bit different. Okay, we're instead of just talking about hand traps, go first, go second, we're gonna talk a little bit more detail. We're gonna go into whether it's good only going first, good only going second, whether it's a valid disruption or whether it's a high impact card. So we're gonna do it a little bit differently, so it's just easier for you guys to digest, because I get the fact that some people kind of take it, oh, if I'm going first, I can't side these cards. That's not usually the case. I think the game has gotten a little bit more diverse in terms of how your hand traps can be used, how your trap cards can be used, to the point where, it's actually okay to play some of these cards. So that's kind of what we're going to do here. And starting off, we have our roster of the standard hand traps that everyone would probably have in their deck nowadays. We have, of course, the Rock, Ash. We have Infinite Impermanence, which is back in the format, which was always coming back in the previous format, but now it's definitely back for sure, because we don't have to deal with VFD anymore with a Chuche back with it. So it's valid again. We have Joan Lockbird, Psyframe Gamma, and we have Artifact Lancia. These are our standard 6. You know what? I'm going to let you take it off for the first one. Since you're the guest here, why don't you take it off with the Rock across the matchups here?
Yeah, so we'll start off with Dragon Link, right? So I don't think Nibiru is an amazing hand trap by itself against Dragon Link. So just to give context on the Dragon Link combo, right? Generally, they summon 2 dragons. They make Heretic Seal, and then they try to combo another Heretic Seal to play through Nib. Because if they were to get Nibiru, it would trigger a Seal, which is mandatory for those of you who don't know. To summon Brotar, Brotar adds cards like Levy. Levy summons, they make a second seal. So they'll rip a card out of your hand, make a second seal. It's pretty ridiculous. But when you pair it up with other hand traps, Nibiru can have an impact. But it's not definitely a high impact hand trap for sure against Dragon Link.
So on its own, not that great. As a second hand trap, maybe it'll eat the board up. Okay.
Yep.
Next up, we have Invoke Shaddoll. I don't think, for Invoked is always naturally just bad for Nibiru because they immediately just make a Mechaba and they already naturally get that negation. It's not that great. If you're playing against pure Shaddoll, you might find an opportunity to drop the Nib, but then they are going to retrieve a couple of fusion spells along the way, or if not, they probably have well, if you get Shizmed, you're pretty screwed, especially if they're going to go in that route. But then if they're also mixing the package up with a bit of Dogmatica in there, it really becomes what are they running within the package of Invoke, Shaddoll, Eldritch, Dogmatica? It seems like they're always mixing and matching those kinds of matchups. So Nib is actually not that great, but it really depends on the package. I'm going to put a dash on here just because, again, they're not exactly a combo-based matchup, and the Rock is mainly a combo counter.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. The only advantage maybe Nib can have is if you main deck the card, right? You can at least take one card out of the Invoke player's hand. make them drop the Alistair out of their hand if it is only the only monster card in their hand, right? So you can still trade for some value, but I mean it's not amazing by any means, right?
Okay. Eldritch is saying Eldritch and Dogmatica is just a straight X. They just don't summon.
I mean that's a no-brainer, right? There's not much discussion.
There's just no summon there. Well, what about Kit Kat here for you?
Okay, so Kit Kat is interesting. So it really depends on, I think, the skill cap of the Kit Kat player. What I mean by this is there are players who... So there's a couple lines of plays. There's one line where if you open up just Fractal, right? That's by itself a Simorgh that gets you Barrier Statue. However, if you want to like play even more, you're gonna have to like play under the assumption of Nib. And one of the lines that you can do is with Fractal and Warbler that lets you play around Nib, because if you don't, they just make Appaloosa. So it just depends on like the ceiling of like the player itself and how they navigate. But it can be punishing because a lot of players do play really poorly into Nib. But like I said, it just really depends. You know, if they know what they're doing and they suspect you have a Nib in the hand, they can definitely play around it. So I would say like in between. It's not amazing. It's not the greatest.
Let's do this.
Sure. Yeah. I like that.
I have a better icon for this. Here we go.
Okay.
This.
Oh, that's looking kind of nice.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, it just really depends on like your opponent. So just gauge it pretty well. But if you main deck it, you definitely won't feel too bad when you play against that matchup when you have Nib in hand. But you know, it just depends.
Yeah, more on the positive than the negative, but player dependent. Dinosaur. I'm just gonna put an X on this. It's honestly like if they don't have Misk, great. But if you're doing like an opening turn and they drop a Misk already, they don't have a main phase 2, so you're never gonna be able to find a second opportunity to drop it. And by the time they get to main phase 2, like the Dolka's on board already.
Yeah,
and if they have combo, then if they have combo, they're gonna have the Dolka. If they don't have combo, you can't even drop the Nib on them. They don't summon enough after the fact. If you ash them on the banishing of Misk, they don't generate that kind of monster advantage anymore, unless it's like they're going second and you're going first and you have the Nib. Then it's a little bit different then. But overall, it's not very good.
No, it's not amazing.
But that's only for these matchup guys. It doesn't mean the Rock is bad, because I can say for sure there's a lot of other matchups where the Nib, you drop it and it's basically over. Okay.
Yeah.
Next up we have Dragon Link for Ash.
Ash. Okay, so Ash is I think terrible against the Dragon Link matchup. However, it's situational in the sense that if they open up Chaos Space, right, that's like the perfect Ash timing for you. It's, you know, you go 1 for 2, and if they don't have like, you know, ways to play, they have to play with 3 cards now. But other than that, if you don't Ash them on the Chaos Space, it's like not like, it's very bad. So you have to pair it up with another hand trap to have it be like somewhat decent. But for the most part, it's like pretty bad.
It's closer to this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Invoke Shaddoll. This one's kind of iffy. I mean, if you're going second, or rather, if they're going second, then you can hit the Shaddoll Fusion, which is great. You should always save it for... Huge. I would say save it for the Shaddoll Fusion more than anything, because it's really difficult if they get that advantage when they get to start sending stuff from the deck. They're literally playing with a pot of greed at this point, because those 2 cards, they generate... It's a Wendy plus sometimes a Squamata to follow up with something else, or they can even dump a dragon to pop your card if you have some sort of back row. It's just really flexible for them, and you don't want to give them like the jack of all trade card, and it's pretty good to hit them on those cards, and it's definitely worth it to hit them. It's definitely worth it to play. The only thing that's iffy is like if they're playing Invoked, do you want to hit, like, here's a question for you. Do you actually want to hit anything along the lines of the Terraforming, Meltdown to the Alistair? Those 3 cards.
I usually hit Alistair. But the thing is, if you suspect that they hard drew Invocation, which is like, I don't know, it's like the math isn't like that high on it, then you can like Ash the Meltdown. But I think for the most part, you just wait until they Alistair, because if they're playing Shaddoll package with it, if you Ash the Meltdown, then they can set a Shaddoll monster, so that's still some advantage that they can get. Whereas if they commit their normal summon to the Alistair, it's like, you know, they can't just set a Shaddoll monster, like play with anything else. Yeah. So I usually Ash the Alistair,
Yeah.
And if you don't, then they have Mechaba, so.
Unless you're Milano, where anytime he ashes anything, there's always the Invocation that follows up.
If you're, you're an Invoke player when you always draw Invocation with Alistair.
Exactly.
So,
all right,
nothing you can do about it.
Next we have Eldritch. I can give this to you. It's actually really good. I think many cases.
Amazing. Yeah, amazing.
Bird Up?
I'd say Bird Up is not that great. The only really good card you can hit is Fractal, but then you run the risk of hitting into like Gamma. So you have to like be careful on that. You like there's no other really good ashable card in that deck unless maybe like Shurag.
There's also like Nerval, but like
there's also Nerval, yeah, but like Nerval is usually being sent off Fractal, so you would like you let them Fractal so that they can hit the Nerval and then you ash the Nerval. But then if they have a normal summon Tri Brigade, they just banish 2. So then you have to think about, do I ash the Fractal so they don't have 2 names in the grave? But then I would say if you do main deck ash and you have it, the biggest recommendation I can have for people is to hold it, not use it for anything except the Simorgh Link 3. That's actually one of the plays I usually do when I hard open Ash and I main deck it. I'm like, I'm just gonna hold it for Simorgh. If they play into Appaloosa, I was never winning that game anyways. So I would say just hold it for the Link 3, because if you're not floodgated, you can play, and if you can play, you have a chance to win.
Okay, you know, that's fair. Dinosaur, it's good. it's just good.
Yep.
You can hit the miss as banishing. That's usually what you should always hit. If you double hand trap, no, still hit the misc. just get rid of that misc. Don't let the Animadorn drop, because the moment you let the Animadorn drop, it's already too late, because they can, like, if they have a misc, and chain misc and everything will still go through. You have to hit the stuff that's in the grave, not on the field, and that's basically the only opportunity you really have. Like, don't hit Fossil Dig. It's really like
don't hit Dig. They main deck Gamma. The only other card you want to be careful about is hitting Extravagance. That's one of the biggest bait for that deck. I would never ash Extravagance, because their combo sequence requires like misresolving. So if you understand that, like, they can draw as many cards as they want, but if they can't set up a board because Mish is ass, then it's, you know, it's fine. The board is playable if they're going first. And of course, like, going second is a little harder. You have to make that judgment call, because if they draw blowout cards, you're probably going to be in a rough spot even if they can't play. So you just make that judgment call.
All right, now we go into Imperm / Veiler. Not everything that Veiler does is going to be relatable, but Imperm nonetheless. A target 1 base negation versus Dragon Link.
Not amazing. To be honest, it's terrible. If you open it up with another hand trap, maybe it's decent into the LP, but they set end on Hermetic Seal, which is still a threat, right? So Imperm isn't that great, and even if you draw as a 6 card, if you Imperm Hermetic Seal, it doesn't really do much, because
they'll still summon.
Exactly, it can still tribute for cost even though it's negated. So they'll still get a body. So Imperm is not that great, to be honest. The only benefit you can say is play around the tactics, but play around tactics doesn't matter if you like, even if it resolves, you don't win, right? So like, it's not that great.
Versus Invoked / Adol versus Invoked. I usually don't hit the Alistair. I'd rather just save it for the Mechaba. Just drop it, because usually if he has to burn the Mechaba to save itself, it's pointless already. So it's basically a free negation on the Mechaba on its own. Also, if there's like a Winda on board, it really depends. If they're going into Schism into the Winda, you're not dropping Imperm anyway, because you've already developed some sort of board. They wait for you to commit before you do anything. But then if they set up an early turn Winda, or a Kaliga for that matter, something that you definitely want to Imperm, I would say it's value right there, because you're not stuck under a floodgate, and just because you're allowed to play for just trading 1 card, it's worth it in that case. And a lot more people are playing Kaliga now, whether you're playing just Invoke themselves or even like Virtual World, they're playing Kaliga as well. So there's that.
I think it also has really good benefit too. Like, if you think about it, like, you know, if you're playing a combo deck, you don't want to throw your entire hand into like a window board. So like, one of the things it allows you to do is to be patient. You know, you can set the Imperm in the same column as Schism, wait for the following turn, and then negate the window and the Schism in one go. And then, because you have to keep in mind, they can't attack directly, right? So you're not gonna like die most likely, unless they open up like a lot of fusion spells. Then you would, but if they did, you weren't winning anyways. But it just lets you play a little patient, I think, which is nice.
Okay. Versus Eldritch, I'll just put this down here.
It's not amazing, but I would say there's some key interactions to watch out for.
Okay.
If your opponent summons a Haquero or a Conquistador in the same column that Imperm was activated, it'll go back to the spell and trap zone. So just keep that in mind. The other interaction, that interaction is pretty important.
Yes.
People forget about that, and it just stays like face up there.
Yep.
Which is nice because they can't recur their engine unless they have access to Lord already. You can imperm like the Maximus if Maximus resolving is a problem for you, or Ecclesia. So it's not the worst, but I mean it's not amazing.
Versus Kit Kat. This is kind of a weird one.
I think it's amazing.
Really?
It's amazing.
What are you hitting on?
So if you look at you hit the Warbler. If you hit the Warbler, they just which is if they open Fractal Warbler, you hit the Warbler. If they open up Fractal and any other name, you basically imperm the first thing they summon. So they go like Fractal, send Kit, send Nerval, or like they go Fractal, send Kit. No, sorry. Fractal, send Nerval, add Kit, normal summon Kit, Kit effect banish 2 to summon. You imperm that, and then they banish 2 for cost. So they lost a lot of resources there. So in order for them to recruit Beast, they have to like make Almirage or weird plays, but that requires them to have cards like Curious, which that's like the only like extender in like the deck, to be honest.
Okay.
So imperm is actually like very strong, or but you have to do it like very early because keep in mind, right? Simorgh the Link 3 cannot be impermed. So just keep that in mind. Can't be targeted.
That's the one card that you really don't want on the board. The moment that Simorgh Link 3 comes out and you are unable to kill it over 2 turns, the game is more or less over. The sheer advantage of just getting free, like I guess they can summon basically anything out of their deck. They can actually amass massive amounts of cards just because they'll just summon out some of their Lyrilisc. They don't have to go into like the statue every time. Dinosaur.
It's terrible. However, because I do main deck imperm in one of my decks, and I think it's going second with imperm into the Dino board isn't that bad. However, if the Dinosaur player opens up Lost World, then you can count that imperm being dead. So that's like the only issue with it. But if they don't open up Lost World, going second with it isn't the worst. But I mean, I would never side imperm for Dinosaur. This is like along the same context as if you were to have it in your main deck and you're going second, you wouldn't feel too bad because you can imperm Conductor, you can imperm use the Dolka.
Yeah, that's pretty important too.
Yep.
And Droll. Okay.
Oh, yeah, good. I think this card is amazing actually against Dragon Link. If you think about the way combo players are, the way their Dragon Link combos, they go usually plus like 4 or 5. KS base is a plus 3. You draw 1, you add 2, almost I think 3 times. So it's very, very strong. You add Boot Sector off. So if you draw them,
tons of cards.
Ravine, so many cards. Dragon Ruler, the KS Ruler, they can mill, by the way. For those of you who may not know that ruling, they can mill because it's optional to add from the pile that you mill. So that's something to keep in mind. But for the most part, Joel should like put a dent in their line. They can add the tidying, right? Like that stops like I think like 2-3 disruptions like by itself, because you don't lose a card in your hand because they can't search Levy. You don't get bounced because they can't search tidying. So it's very, very powerful.
Awesome. Versus Invoked. Well, if you hit the very first card, it's always going to be good. If you hit the earlier you hit it, the better. And there's actually a lot of things. I mean, if they're playing Shaddolls, you can block out the Hedgehog, you can block out the Beast. There's a lot of things that you can do to block it out, which is why I still really enjoy having this card. And depending on which line, the more mixed the engine, the more powerful Drone Lockbird will be, because you can block out, if they go for the early Eldritch search, that means you block out the other 3 engines, and that on its own is really, really good. And even against a deck like I guess I'll even put this one here against like Eldritch, Dogmatica. It's good against them too because all their lines require multiple searches. If they go into Nadir's Servant, if they throw Titaniclad, well, they search their one card with Nadir's Servant. If they search Ecclesia, you shut down the rest of the line, and then they don't even get the Titaniclad search either way. So it's pretty brutal, and it really cuts like the amount of back row you have to answer to the turn that you get to play. Next.
Yeah, another cool line that is, I think, might be an interaction that's important to note is if your opponent goes Nadir's Servant, send Apollonia, add Ecclesia, then they go Apollonia effect, you can change roll to it, forcing them to shuffle back the Apollonia in the graveyard back into their extra deck. So even if they hard drew the Schism, they won't be able to activate it because they'll have no Shadow monsters in the grave.
Super useful. That's a really good interaction.
Yep.
Next,
Kit Kat. Another very strong hand trap against this deck. This deck pluses quite a bit. So you think about cards like Warbler, right? Summoning back Cobalt Sparrow, which lets you add any level 1. There's also the rank 1 Lyrilisc monster that adds you any level 1 winged beast.
They play tanky, don't they? To search
Tanky,
Fractal? Yeah.
Nerval. There's There's Flaget that fixes your hand. There's so many cards that this draw like puts a lot of work in for.
Yeah.
So I really like it.
It's pretty high impact. Versus Dinosaur. This
Depends.
one is.
Yeah,
I mean, if they start with a Fossil Dig, maybe, but I think it's kind of iffy because they don't really draw that many cards. I guess they can go Animadorn if they got it. They get to add the double evolution pill.
Yeah.
Aside from
it just
that,
depends. I think it's like decent. Like if they go Oviraptor Search, that means that their Nemodorn can actually activate, which is a big deal. So
it's still
I don't
good.
think it's the worst. It's
still
good.
good.
Yeah,
It's still good.
Yeah, and if they do it on like a dig or an extravagance,
Then it's good. That's
like
really
their
good.
turn is like pretty much over. Because just keep in mind, right? Like the biggest play for Dino players is to go miss for one, summon a Nemodorn. Under Droll, you can't add pill. So that's like one of the reasons why. I think it's still fine.
It is iffy depending on when they drop. If they start off with a Misk, then then that's a different story. Then you gotta play through that. Next, aside from Gear, Gamma's just really, I think it's really good personally. It's able to clear off the monster. It's like the ability to remove the monster or remove the card is important for a lot of these combo decks, which is why we got a big insurgence of like a lot of removal based traps. And of course,
I mean, I would have to say that like, because I mean, this is how you know Dragon Link is a very unfair deck. You can't really have one hand trap that beats Dragon Link. I mean, Joel is like an exception, but it's a floodgate hand trap, right? Like you'd have to consider cards like D-Shifter along the same category. Gamma, like if your opponent hard opens cards like Brotar, Gamma's automatically dead. They can like sequence around the Gamma too, because even if you Gamma them, right, you gotta understand like they still have Heroic Seal. If you Gamma the LP, like if they do the line where they make it so that even if you Gamma LP, like they can still make a Pisty right afterwards and still play. Like it's just you really need two hand traps,
it kind of reminds me of what's that deck? The old school
Emancipators?
Old school Emancipators, where like one hand trap is never gonna be enough.
It never feels enough. Yeah,
it's always a pair of hand traps. I mean, if you pair like Gamma plus a Nibiru, then that's amazing because you'll have that perfect timing where everything will die and there's nothing gonna be left on the board. But
you just wait. I mean, you wait until the end of the combo because you'll go chain 1 Nib, chain 2 Savage, chain 3 Gamma, and then they lose everything. At this point, they would have Brotarred already. But keep in mind, right? At that point, you would have gone levied for 1. So you would have had 2 cards left in hand, draw 3 cards, return. You still have to crack the rest of the board. They'll summon off seals, right? And they'll have a tidying set. So,
but let's hope that it is better than dealing with the board. It is still better than that.
True.
I mean, I don't want to deal with all that stuff.
Yeah,
but tidying is such a good card.
I would say a good move that I did this during the LCS is if you hard draw the Gamma, a play that I did was I actually kept it in my hand and I didn't Gamma it at all because I realized if I Gammaed my opponent, like it didn't really change their end board at all. If anything, I went -1 in my hand. You can hold it for your following turn. If you're playing a deck like Shadal's, right? Shadal Fusion is really nice. The other cool interaction is if you, let's say, play Alistair, right? Let's say you normal Alistair, you try to search Invocation, it gets negated. You can go into battle phase, try to attack the Seal. They'll Seal bounce your Alistair, and then because Seal is mandatory, you can then Gamma the Seal effect in the graveyard, start summon the Gamma and the Driver, and start cracking their board. Main phase 2, make like Phoenix, pop the Tidying, and then like if you have cards like Shadal Fusion, that's your last card, just activate Shadal Fusion, and then you should be able to like just turn the tides back right there. So like you just have to be careful about like your hand traps and how you can like best use them. So
it's gonna depend on your deck as well. Like you're playing Shadal, you just have the answer and the follow up to some of these. If you're playing a combo deck, you're not likely going to have that kind of follow up. So it's very different. But yes, versus Invoked.
I think Gamma on Alistair is so strong. But
it is strong, but then like if they already have the Invocation,
Invocation is although it's like not they won't have a light monster, so they would have to like do some weird plays. But it's also even better. So this is where it really depends. So if they're playing Invoke Dogmatica, Gamma is like god tier. But if they're playing Invoke Shadals, it's like still pretty decent because you stop them from getting access to a fusion spell. They lose a dark monster on the field. So if they draw like El Shadal, they would need 2 other Shadal names in their hand to like keep playing, right? So it's fair. I mean, they have 4 cards after that. 3 out of the 4 has to be like L plus like 2 Shadowmount mount names. Like, if you got it, you got it. It's so.
No, it makes sense.
Yep.
As for Eldritch is bad. I don't think there's anything you can actually do with that particular card because they don't really have monster effects. As for Dogmatica, you could stop an Ecclesia from actually being summoned out, and that actually stops a second search, which could prevent you from getting hit by a punishment, or you still minimize their hand size by 1 less, which is quite significant.
Yeah, I agree. It's not amazing at all. So I would not be putting Gamma against Eldritch, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's that, and for me, it's good enough for the Dogmatica, but if you're going, if you're going second, if they're going for, say, they're doing an Entis pop, they cleared your first monster, your only card, with punishment, and then they're trying to Entis pop your spell. I guess this is kind of really situational. If you have 2 monsters,
it's
you still
very
can't
situational.
You still can't really activate it, so let's just leave it here.
I think it would have to be like in your main deck, and then you find some obscure way in which it's relevant. I mean, if you find a first monster effect that you can Gamma, you probably do it. The other line, if they're playing Zoo Eldritch or Eldritch, you can Gamma their Trident because if they open up Outland plus a Zoo, which is very common because they go normal summon Zoo, make Trident with 3 materials or 2 materials underneath. They'll Trident their Outland after they search with it, so they can send the Lord or like Cuero Conquistador to get access to Sanguine, and that's a really good Gamma. So I think Gamma has like some sort of like value if you main deck it, but I would never like side it in.
Okay. And Kit Kat.
Oh yeah, Gamma's amazing.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it's really good. Removes the body. You can, like I said, hold it for the Sigmorg. You can do it on like the first name when they go banish 2.
Yeah.
Warbler. There's so many good cards.
The disruption's really good value. Versus Dinosaur, you can hit the Misk. I think it's kind of like a second Ash almost, because you can definitely hit that, because everything else in the main phase there's no point hitting at all. It's kind of pointless, but you don't fight the Dolka with Gamma, you will lose. It's mainly just for the Misk, if anything.
Yeah,
not the
it's
Misk.
just for the Misk.
Yeah, it's just
like
for
another
Misk.
Ash for Misk. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's still good though. It's still good. Just a bad top deck.
Still good. Yeah, not the best top deck, that's for sure.
Lancia versus Dragon Link. This one I felt kind of iffy because I feel like they can still play through it if they're not playing the white and black dragon or the chaos stuff. Like they can still build a board.
Yeah. I think it's not great. I would never side into it willingly. However, I do see the value of it if you're going first with a deck and you Lancia them. Because if you think about some of the cards that let them break your board, it's cards like Levianeer, it's cards like Wyvern Busters. Those are like the unfair cards that like lets them keep pushing after getting like disrupted back and back. So if I was going first, like I know for example I've been playing a lot of Prank Kids. I would put in Lancia going first because I can stop Cosmic Cyclone, I can stop Levy popping my back row, I can stop like a lot of stuff. So I would do that. But also some lists are like leaning towards Pot of Prosperity now, so it's like decent for sure. I wouldn't say it's like amazing. But Lancia, it just really depends on your deck.
Okay, no, it makes sense. It's just, to me, it feels really weird. I mean, once you get past the first turn, there is more value to hit them with the Lancia, especially if they have Chaos Rule in the grave and they're just gonna banish and start just amassing, like probably going into like hot red, stuff like that. You probably want to prevent them from even getting that opportunity at all.
Yeah, like one of the biggest things that Dragon Link players have been doing is making the Chaos Ruler early. So Lancia has a lot even more value towards that because they're usually adding a Chaos monster off of the mill 5. So like this like stops that as well, right? So and they don't get the Chaos Space extra draw. It makes Chaos Space the dead card in their hand. So yeah, it's like overall like decent, but it like going second, I don't think it's that great. Like you're probably going -1 to be honest.
As for Shadow Invoke, what are your thoughts on this one?
So I would say it's like good into the invoke portion of the engine, but the issue with if they hard drew like Shadow names, then it's like, okay, well invocation is still resolving summoning Shadow monsters, and nothing else really requires like any sort of banishing. The only relevance you can like make an argument for is if people are playing Maximus, that it stops Maximus if they're playing like Invoke Dogmatica. But I would only put in Lancia against the Invoke Dogmatica, but not the Invoke Shadow matchup for sure.
Just, yeah, this is a bit. Oh, this is gonna be kind of hard for me to whatever. It's just something like this.
Yeah.
Like invoke is like, yeah, you can prevent them from invocation. It's probably something that I would probably shotgun personally, but it's also a little bit dangerous because if you have gamma, it's pretty bad. And the moment they already summon the Alistair, it's already kind of good for them. It's really weird. But like preventing them from summoning is like one less monster to deal with, and also they'll have to like the thing is, like, the moment they summon out the Alistair, they're already linking it off into like either like what's that, Magister,
the Magister's Artemis.
Artemis. So like they already have some way of actually playing in. Like, it's nice to leave the invocation in the graveyard, but if they have a second copy, they'll just start cycling anyway. It's really, to me, a little iffy. Eldritch. This one.
So I've been playing a deck that's been bane necking Lancia, which is Prank Kids, and I find the Lancia is actually very good when you're going first into the Alec matchup, because the way Alec cracks your board is they start going like Lord Effect, send like Caquero or something, start poking at your card. They'll go like Lord Effect. They'll usually send like a land, and when you Lancia them, right, all the 2 cards that would have plus them like just stops working. But like, I mean, that's so situational. I mean, for the most part, like, Lancia doesn't do anything against Alec. It just makes your engine like 1 turn slower.
Yeah, you're just buying 1 turn.
Yeah, but you have to make sure you capitalize on that, or else like that Lancia just went -1 for you, and it's really hard to take a -1 when you're playing against a deck that just
grinds infinite, right?
Yeah. So because it's just way too much. Against Dogma, like it's like I said, only for the Maximus, really, nothing else. Other than that, it's like pretty terrible.
Let's put it that way. That makes sense. Versus the bird, it's amazing. It just shuts everything off. The moment they summon the first bird, that's when I'm at. You know what? I'm throwing this out there right now. If you don't have Call by the Grave, your turn is skipped.
Yep, good luck. Yeah, no, Lancia is, I think, a no-brainer against this deck.
I think we'll just put this right here too.
Dinosaur, yep.
Yeah.
Can't make UCT, can't pill, can't miss.
There's a lot of problems when that goes up.
So I actually played against Ryan at the last qualifier, and you start seeing that, this is where like good deck building comes into play, where he activated MST in standby phase, hit my Pandemonium. But if he had Cyclone, like most Dino players, he would have lost because I had Lancia. So this is something that if you're playing Dinos, just be wary of. Start considering MST in your side deck. It's it actually has a lot more value, especially if your deck's already losing to Lancia. You're not gonna be playing evenly matched. Same logic applies to Cosmic Cyclone. So
I like
just
that.
Keep that in mind.
That's something that a lot of people that do deck building, they're like, oh, these cards are great, but remember that counter-siding is also a thing, and if people are counter-siding against you and you're using stuff that the counter-side will basically counter, it's you're kind of playing dead cards in your deck when you side in. So
exactly,
these are the 500 IQ plays coming from Pack right here. Just things you have to pay attention to. Okay, so it seems like we have hit the 30-minute mark, guys. Well, guess what? There is going to be a part 2 on this, and the part 2 on this is going to be over on Pack's channel, where we're going to cover 2 more pages, because he's an awesome guy, and I decided to, you know what, I'm going to share some fun with you guys. So if you guys want to see the part 2 where we talk about, the disruptions, and not only are we covering disruption, we're also covering the high impact cards and how to properly play them, well, check it out at Pack's channel. But for now, if you guys want to do me a favor, hit that like, hit subscribe, ding the notification bell. We're trying to get all this published before the extravaganza, so that you guys have some material to study up on, some matchups to learn. So go subscribe here, hit like button, go over there, subscribe, just so that you'll be ready when that video drops. And I'll see you guys in the next one.
All right, guys, I'll see you in my channel. Thank you.